Okay, awesome. Um, Maybe we could start with like introductions.
Okay.
I guess I can start off. My name is Sala Derosier. I use she, her pronouns. I'm 15. I'm a sophomore at Annalee. And I have been with Sunrise. Well, we co-founded it in April, and it's been a really amazing experience so far. And I am also a junior commissioner on the Sonoma County branch of the Junior Commission on the Status of Women.
Thank you.
Okay. My name's Rachel. My preferred pronouns are she, her. I'm 15 and I'm a sophomore at Annalee High School. And I'm the training lead for our hub. And I also started at the beginning of this hub during the summer. When we kind of created this hub because we were worried about like the state of our country, and we wanted to do something for all the people who were less fortunate than us. So that's how this hub started.
Wonderful. Great to meet you.
My name is Amy, and I'm Rachel's twin sister. And I'm also a sophomore at Annalee High School, and I'm 15. I started at the same time in April with our hub. I am the hub coordinator at our hub, and I use she, her, hers, and they, them, theirs pronouns. And I'm also on the Junior Commission on the Status of Women.
Awesome. Good to meet you.
Hi, my name is Nora. I use she, her pronouns. I am a freshman at Santa Rosa High with the Art Quiz Theater program. I'm pretty sure I joined near June.
Sorry about that, guys. How rude.
Totally fine.
I'm sorry. So you joined near June?
Yes, and I'm also on the Sebastopol BLM visibility team.
Thank you. Good to meet you.
Okay, I need to unmute. So to start off, we thought we'd kind of tell you a little bit about what Sunrise is and go over our goals for this meeting.
That would be great. I'm really curious I've heard about all of you, about the organization, and now you're talking about hubs and when you started and your engagement efforts. So I would really appreciate just learning a little bit about you. I think that would be very helpful for me.
So the Sunrise Movement is a national youth-led movement that is working to combat climate change and social injustice and create millions of good jobs in the process. We're aligned with the Movement for Black Lives, and we also organize around passing the Green New Deal. So it uses like a decentralized structure. So there's one central leadership, but they found like hubs in different communities to like take initiative and work in their community.
Got it.
Yeah, and so our goals for this meeting, we'd like to get to know you a little bit better, as well as your vision at a local and national level. So do you have any goals for this meeting, any specifics?
I have two goals: share some of my background and hopefully help you get to know me a little bit better. And then honestly, a lot of it for me is to listen to you and what your interests are and learn from that. I really feel like that's a major role for someone who represents others, to be able to listen, kind of open heart, open mind, learn from the people who live here, and you're the people who live here. So those are really my two goals.
Thanks so much. Yeah. Maybe we could start off with some like general questions.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Could you start with telling us a little bit about yourself and your platform?
Sure. And just as to give me a reference point, do you want me to start from zero? Have you already looked at websites, done any research? What do you want from me?
We've looked, I've looked over your campaign website and your Facebook page a little bit, but maybe some basic background would be helpful too.
Sure. Okay. Yeah, so I've been here for 20 years. My two boys attended Annalee and local Parkside and Pinecrest, and then they went to Annalee High School. They are now 26 and 29. I notice here we have all female presentation, and so boys take longer. Those genetic boys, they take longer to grow up. I'm convinced of it. Anyway, they're great young men, and they are now, one of them still living in Sebastopol, one is living down in Santa Barbara. But I raised my children here, and I understand the school system, at least when I was there. Been here about 20 years, came here they were like 5 and 8 years old. They were young. And we came from Central Valley, escaping, moving to a wonderful little town. I left a legal practice, so I have that background, kind of that analytical, logical piece that was forced onto me as an attorney, which actually is quite useful. And then here, I've really been engaged in a lot of leadership roles, but also grassroots efforts in just about any area. A lot of youth and students and youth employment, but also seniors and environment and business too, a real mix. And then you probably know this, I was the executive director of the community center for 7 years, 2010 to 2017, retired for 2.5 years, and then this craziness hit. And I thought, wow, maybe it's time for me to step up and try to benefit this wonderful town with the skills that honestly the town helped create for me. 20 years of kind of being mentored by Sebastopol has given me a real understanding of our individual interest, our motivation to express our opinions. I mean, look, I see that with you here, but our commitment generally to understand that there's a collaborative process that might involve some compromise on certain issues, unless they are super, super principal issues, go deep, but compromise in order to serve multiple interests in order to benefit the community. So I think that individual press to say what you believe, but balance it against the community interest is something that Sebastopol has taught me. And so I feel like I have the opportunity to give that back. Does that do it?
Yeah, that's really admirable. Thanks for sharing.
Sure.
You went into it a little bit, but could you tell us a little bit about why you decided to run?
It's funny because people ask, well, obviously, not surprising. People ask me that all the time. And I'm sure you actually get asked that. Why did, these youthful people with their entire lives in front of them, why did they decide to spend their time on a Zoom meeting with a 61-year-old? I mean, it's the same sort of what motivates you. And really the answer is the same. I was driven by a passion to do something. I was sitting there 2.5 years of retirement in my living room, checking CNN every hour, going bananas, not being able to really feel like I could do something, and yet driven. This is a bad time. I mean, you all know that. This is a bad time. And it's time for people who can do it, who have whatever it is that allows them to step up and do it, to do that, to take the risk and offer their skills. And I have this really interesting skill set. It's people tell me I'm really good at problem solving, at kind of creative solutions, at bringing people together, collaboration. I have an incredible curiosity about everyone. I mean, I really want to know about all of you. What are your backgrounds? And that gives me the ability to come up with, it gives me the foundational skills to be able to come up with some creative solutions and listen. But, I have this pragmatic thing. So it was this drive to do something in a horrid situation rather than stay tucked inside my theoretically, superficially safe little house with my jammies on and my cup of coffee in my hand. But, I bet, were driven by a similar need still.
Yeah, absolutely. That motivation, and yeah, it's really wanting to do something.
Yep.
Yeah. So what would your priorities be if you got elected to city council?
My priorities are the priorities that you're going to be hearing from a lot of people. So for me, there's two categories here. There's the priorities, and then there's the challenges. And so the priorities for me are what you'll see on my website. And I think that they still hold true despite the challenges, and we'll get to that in a minute. The challenges just define our path to getting to the priorities. But my priorities are, kind of vital and vibrant town. I think we need to remember there are these big national issues, but we do have potholes out in our streets, and we do have a need for water and sewer and housing, really essential, affordable housing. And so those local issues, I think we need to not let go of. I happen to see within those local issues environmental concerns, because we have got to do something about protecting our environment for this generation and for the future. I see that along the lines of, keeping our streets maintained. It's really essential. I then have a lot of interest in a second priority area, which would be supporting businesses, jobs for locals, meaning not just building jobs, but finding jobs that will support those who live here, and supporting our families. That crosses over into a housing issue, but it also goes into a distance learning and all sorts of other mental health issues. So there's the supporting the families and the seniors, and also within that second category, I would include kind of arts and entertainment, the enrichment piece. And so those are really the priorities, and therefore for now and for future. It's easy to lay out all those priorities, and you will see the other candidates laying them out in the same way. What you may be trying to get at in your question is, how do you get there given where we're at right now? And let's recognize that the right now is not, and you know this, I'm sure you know this, the right now, people tend to look at, oh, well, right now is being triggered by COVID-19, by Black Lives Matter igniting interest. But all of us know that things before and things have led to where we are and create a context, and that things after are going to be affected by it. There isn't, I talked to a guy who runs mental health for Santa Rosa High, who happens to live in Sebastopol, and he's focused on building capacity for after. And I'm thinking, after, what are you talking about after? We are in this, it will affect, it isn't a moment that there will be this and then done. There is this that's been affected by everything that came before, and it will affect what comes after. So the challenges are very real, and we need to face them. And yes, in fact, COVID-19 is a serious challenge that is affecting each one of us, you too. I mean, you're not at your high school classes, you're not socializing. Fortunately, you're very facile with social media and Zoom and that kind of thing, but it's not the same. But interestingly to me, one of the challenges people would identify, you'd look at COVID-19, you'd look at the social and economic challenges, part of which is the Black Lives Matter movement. And then you also see the business challenge. And then there's a housing challenge. COVID-19 has exacerbated all of that. But, I tend to think that it may have opened doors. I know that may be contrary to our instinct. It seems like such a negative thing. But if you look historically, it sometimes takes a really down, horrible, dysfunctional moment to force people to consider options that they would never have considered in the past. And so I see that with Black Lives Matter. We all were going along, oh yeah, I mean, this has been going on for years, nothing's changed. Some, but really not in a deep way. But COVID-19 left people in their homes, isolated. They were no longer distracted by their regular jobs and their regular schoolwork. And so it created an opportunity, a platform, a launch for a focus on that issue, that free time to really ponder it. My point is that with the challenges, we need to see them as tossing the prior template, the way in which we saw intersects kind of up in the air, and allowing us to then go, okay, how can we make connections that are new, that will be productive for the future? And so look at you. I look at you and I see other youth who are stepping up, and I say to myself, these people have stepped up and are now in the public eye and are getting attention. And what we need to do is not just focus on them right now, have a Zoom meeting. We need to see, how do we engage this energy in our little town of Sebastopol for the future. So I would see as a concrete suggestion that we put together a task force that would affiliate youth with the city council, not in a superficial way, but maybe supported by staff to actually give reports, input, be listened to, not like my generation's task force, no task, no force, but a real productive group of inspiring young people who can then connect with others in the community to come up with pragmatic solutions. That's something that we wouldn't have without COVID-19. When I look at businesses are struggling. We know that, it's awful, but it forces us to ask ourselves, what is the future of business in Sebastopol? If I am on platforms buying product that is delivered to me in my home, how can we fashion a platform that will create that selling opportunity for our local businesses? How can we intersect our people at home who want products with our local retailers and restaurants in a way that we wouldn't have imagined in the past? So I see intersects in all those ways, and I can go on, but so that's how I would say, there are priorities, and I do have 3 priorities on my website. They are the big vision priorities, but the challenges force us to come up with creative, pragmatic solutions that see intersects and opportunities where others might not have seen them and where another time would not have provided the opportunity.
Thank you. That was a very excellent answer. And I really liked how you brought up something that I know is really integral to the Sunrise Movement, about how out of these moments of extreme I don't know, destruction and adversity and all that, we have the opportunity to make something of it and to make it better than where we were before.
Yep, I agree.
Yeah. I would love to hear a little bit about your experience with Rotary and the Sebastopol Cultural Community Center.
Sure. Rotary, so I joined Rotary as kind of part of my community center relationship. I started the community center in 2010 and was there for about 7 years. And in that context, I decided to join Rotary. They approached me. It's funny, Rotary in other communities is incredibly conservative. And our Rotary group is, it's West Sonoma County. So it is local business people. And it's been inspirational to work with this group of business people. It's a real mix of men and women. Our Rotary Club, the Noon Club and the Morning Club, has been very proactive about that, which is kind of neat. And there are a number of, younger than 60 people in our membership. And we do some, I think, amazing things. That's how I got involved in supporting the construction core program at Annalee, placed out of Laguna High School, that trains high school students at Annalee and Laguna to then step into construction jobs. That was through Rotary, and Rotary funded, $30,000 a year toward training high school students, and not just training them, but facilitating them getting jobs. That's been a major thing, and it's Joe Maloney, who is awesome, and that's continuing even through this situation. So that's how I got involved in that. The teacher recognition program, which has been amazing, and then a lot of programs that support overcoming obstacles, that support local youth. It's an opportunity to take funds that are supported locally and internationally and funnel them into a local effort that can really make a difference because it's substantial. So I don't know if you saw the playground redo that's been going on at Libby Playground. That's a Rotary. I mean, I sold so many tamales, don't get me started. $30,000 worth of tamales that we raised. It was mind-boggling. So it's that kind of hands-on, and we've done improvements at the senior center, which was really great. It's those sorts of projects. The benches in front of the library, that was something that I helped get together, and it was nice because it was actually furniture that's built by juvenile kids who are in juvenile hall, which is kind of cool too. I think one of the benches went to Annalee High School, or one of the tables. So you asked me about that. The community center, I loved the community center. It was an opportunity to serve an incredible array of interests. I felt so engaged with the community. I felt that we were doing so much just in terms of offering regular old programs, Teens Work for Job Placement, the Kinder Gym, all those little kids in the community center main hall, the exercise classes, writing classes, music. So sad, but it'll be back. We did a lot for music that engaged youth, which was really cool. It was an opportunity to really collaborate and provide services that the community said they wanted. And listening to the community, I guess I learned that in that job, that you can't just assume that you know what the community wants. You have to ask. And I had this weird conversation with this guy out of Rohnert Park recently where he didn't seem to get that on a distance learning topic, which I'm happy to talk about. But I learned that you have to ask because you can't assume. So that's really my community center experience. Fabulous. Rotary is fabulous. All the other groups I've been involved in. Patrick Amio, the calendar project, all that has been great. And don't get me started on making my eco-friendly yard signs, because you won't be able to keep me quiet.
Yeah, I saw a little bit about that on your Facebook. I prepared you for a role on the city council?
I think all my experiences have. And I would bet, as you look at why you're doing what you're doing, you would have a similar answer. I don't think it matters where you are in your trajectory of life. What happens is you build certain experiences, and if you're paying attention, then those kind of drive you to the next step. My life experiences from the time when I was a little girl. I love community. My childhood was unstable, unpredictable. Single mom at a time may seem crazy, but when single moms really were unusual in the 60s, I was a latchkey kid, and I had no idea I was a latchkey kid. My brother and me, we just kind of took care of ourselves. So it was a crazy life. She would take us in the summertime, we moved every year, and my mom would take us to communes and camping, and it was just the way life is. That's how kids are. And as I look back on it, it's one of the reasons she moved us to Montana when I was in junior high. I mean, from Venice, California. It was a little unsettling. But I learned through all of that, going to a Indian reservation in Montana, leaving home when I was 17 to come back to California. I learned from all of that to really appreciate, to be resilient, and to appreciate different people and to listen to other people, and in order to then fit in, but also express myself. So that affected who I am. I understand that the people in Venice, California, who I knew when I was a little girl, who were very artsy, into creativity, hippies, crazy time, when my mom taught in Watts, really crazy time, were just as valuable and so interesting as the people who I met in eastern Montana, where it was like the plains and cow country, and I didn't know that baby lambs got their tails chopped off when they were little, and they really don't like it with that hot tar on them. The point is, there's all these different people out there. And so my childhood led me to understand that. And it also exposed me to a lot of dysfunctional people. And I learned that there were a lot of things that I didn't want to do. And as a kid, that was good. Going to college was fabulous. I was on my own, had to support myself, but again, resiliency. And going to law school was really super hard. But it was an amazing skill set that I managed to take away from that. I was a public defender. That was awesome. Working in big law firms was a lesson in how to deal with people in that stratus of life, both clients and just just people, peers. And being here in Sebastopol, raising kids, learning how to navigate the volunteer setting and do whatever I needed to do. I mean, I can do anything. I can dig a hole to put my signs in. Those digger bars are heavy, but I can do it. I can also present in a big meeting. I can do everything in between, and I'm very willing and interested in doing everything in between. Being at the community center taught me to really appreciate people like you, who are trying to grow up. It's not just my kids who I learned that from, but people like you who are in the community taking your time. So it all led me to where I am now. And I look at this community and I look at the world, and it honestly brings tears to my eyes. It is really a tough time. And I'm faced with you, where in your youth, you are stepping up. And to me, that makes Sebastopol an inspirational place to be, and a place where I need to not tuck myself away. I need to step up and do something and offer my services, because Sebastopol has helped me become who I am. So that's really what's driven me, all of that. I'm hoping that I can be of value to the community with the skill set that I have.
That's really great. Now we're going to move on to more like climate related questions. So the first thing is, do you know what the Green New Deal pledge is?
You know, there are a lot. You'll probably have to explain to me this particular proposal. The one thing I know, I'm going to turn on my air conditioning because it's really, really hot. My little air conditioning unit. Hold on. The one thing I really, really know is that there are so many different proposals out there. And I had a conversation with Jim McGreen. I don't know if you know him, but he's a really interesting local guy who's involved in this issue. And another conversation with a woman who's working with an organization that's addressing climate change issues. I also am aware of the fee and dividend proposal, and I know there's a lot of controversy surrounding that. So one of the things that concerns me about all of this is that there seems to be a certain level of chaos in terms of the appropriate approach. And this gets to, how am I going to act as a city council member? How will I do my job if I'm elected? So this is my opportunity to demonstrate that. I am a person who doesn't assume that I know everything. I can identify an issue, and then what I know I need to do is go out there and talk to people who know what they're talking about, and get their perspectives and gather the actual information with a certain amount of appropriate skepticism, but an open mind and open heart to what other people have learned and have to contribute. So tell me, please, what is this proposal?
So basically the Green New Deal pledge is that a pledge saying that like you would use your elected office to basically push and fight for like all the principles of a Green New Deal.
Okay. And what would be the principles of a Green New Deal under this this proposal?
So it's like based off the Green New Deal at the national level. So it's a just transition for like worker.
Okay.
Yeah. And then it's a lot about like prioritizing, as well as like just fighting like for climate justice, also fighting for social justice, and like seeing the intersectionality of all of it, and like making sure that frontline communities that have been so often like left behind in the fight for like climate justice are prioritized and helped.
Okay, that all sounds good.
Yeah, so that's mainly because the Green New Deal is mainly, it's a plan to kind of like mobilize our society to get them onto like a more sustainable path and to help like combat climate change.
So if you look at, so help me understand in the context of the Green New Deal, what is it that a city council could do in order to engage with the Green New Deal? Do city councils sign on? Is there a role for a city council?
So in this, like, at least right now, it's mainly like a pledge, basically.
Okay. Like an individual pledge?
Yeah.
Okay. Have any city councils signed on to the pledge? Do you know?
As far as at least in Sebastopol, as far as I know, none of the city council members have signed on, but I'm not totally sure.
That's interesting. So I will definitely look into it. I'm always really curious about and I'm sure you are too, when you get into the details of a proposal, what it looks like, does it have meat to it? What are the consequences? Does it intersect effectively with other proposals? Does it affect other proposals? But I can definitely commit to take a look at it. And I will tell you that environmentally, I'm your person. I mean, the environmental issues are really important to me. I try to live that sort of life. That Rohnert Park guy, I'll get to him at some point. So I think on an individual basis, we all have to step up and conduct ourselves in as intentional a way we can, in line with our principles. So I have an electric vehicle, we have solar on our house, and I did my yard signs to the consternation of many people, in order to make sure that it was recycled and recyclable, and did a lot of research into that to discover that, unfortunately, what's happening with those the Corplast signs is they're going off as recyclable material, but it turns out they're being bundled and sent off to Malaysia. And there, it's so complicated that much of them either go into the land waste there or they go into the ocean. So we're basically exporting our trash. So I give you that as an example because for me, it's looking below whatever it's not looking for the Band-Aid, but seeing what the thorough, deep solution to the issues are. And the environmental issues are very important to me. And it's compelling to me. So are all of you in this group in support of the Green New Deal? Okay, to me, that's a reason for me to spend time to figure it out, and to take a look at it. And I will definitely sign on. Once I look at it, I have no problem signing on, assuming that it's as you've described it and that I don't see any big red flags. And if I do, I'll get back in touch with you.
Yeah. Yeah, as far as I know, it's a much newer proposal too, or pledge. So that's probably why a lot of people don't know about it yet too. Also, there are just a lot of pledges. So one more pledge that I want to talk about, it's the No Fossil Fuel Money Pledge. So
Okay.
it's pretty symbolic at the local level. Basically, all it's saying is that you won't take large contributions from fossil fuel lobbyists or anybody who really benefits from the fossil fuel industry.
Sounds great. I mean, I could sign on to that right now. I can't imagine any of them even want me.
Yeah, so we'll send a follow-up email and we'll send information.
Thank you, that would be very helpful. And are any of you in this group particularly informed about the fee and dividend proposal or any of those more specific proposals? Okay, I just am really trying to educate myself about them. So thank you. I will look for those, for that email being sent to me.
I'm sorry, I'm going to just barge in. I was just told that RBG has passed away.
Oh no. Oh, that's so awful. That just happened?
Mm-hmm.
Oh no, that's so awful. It just hit me. It's not just that she's passed away, it's like the consequences. Oh my gosh. I don't think he has time to appoint anyone though. I mean, everyone, there will be such a pushback. I can't imagine that we're gonna get a United States Supreme Court appointment before the election. You know, I was so lucky recently to, I think we just need to take a moment and be quiet, don't we?
Yeah,
You know, I was really fortunate to be at the Sundance Film Festival a couple of years ago. And it's a great festival where you have all these really innovative people doing films. And RBG, the movie, was being shown for the first time there. And she showed up. She was there to do the Q&A. And I followed her obviously after law school. Inspiring person, great life history. I mean, and incredible. She had such a friendship with, I think it was Justice Roberts on the United Supreme, you know, completely with a justice who had completely opposing, not completely, but very opposing views. And they had such a friendship. They were always there for each other. They would have tea and yeah. Yeah, it's a bad moment. It really is.
Okay, so moving back into the questions. What is your plan to increase Sebastopol's fire preparedness and resiliency?
Oh yeah, I'm the poster child there. So I have been involved with emergency preparedness here in Sebastopol for years now. I work with Map Your Neighborhood, and I also work with the ham radio guys. There's a group, Sebastopol Neighborhood Communications Unit. And we are in the process of developing a communications plan that is based on a 4-quadrant map in the city of Sebastopol, and then will be extended outside into the environs in order to set up communications if cell towers go down and that kind of thing. It's walkie-talkie based, and we've been testing that approach. I'm an active member of that group, and so that's one thing that I think is very important, is establishing communications so that information can go in and out. And also through that process that we're following, we are cementing our communications and our collaborative relationship with the county emergency system. So those avenues of conversations back and forth are being established. With Map Your Neighborhood, we have a system where neighborhoods support one another in the event of an emergency, because we can't expect the organized emergency systems to be there for us. So I have a Map Your Neighborhood group here in my neighborhood, and I'm in touch with them constantly, and we share information. And I'm helping to get all of those organized throughout Sebastopol. Going back, I was inspired to do all of that because I was at the community center in 2017 when all of the fire refugees came flooding in from Santa Rosa, and Red Cross stayed there. And I realized that we needed to do something as a community to be there for one another and take advantage of that individual drive that we all do in order to benefit the community. So I'm heavily involved there.
That's really great. Okay, so last question is, how do you see your COVID recovery plan intersecting with environmental justice and a just transition?
I love the fact that you've used intersecting a couple of times. I think maybe youthful brains have an easier time at recognizing connections that for the rest of us may not be there. COVID-19, as I said before, has really tossed all the assumptions in the air, I think. And it's created an opportunity to see ways in which interests can intersect and benefit one another that maybe we wouldn't have wouldn't have identified or maybe wouldn't have even been motivated to pursue. In order to get through COVID-19 and to whatever is going to be on the other side, we have all sorts of opportunities to see those intersections. So specifically, you talk about environmental concerns and social justice concerns. There's also economic concerns there. On the environmental side, I think we're being forced to recognize that it may be time to build our opportunity to market ourselves as a resilient community where people come during climate change. And one way we can do that, so there's a business side to that, right? If we can market ourselves, position ourselves to rights for climate change, because let's face it, it's not just how North communities are, it's whether from an organizational perspective, they are positioned well to be responsive to climate change and other challenges. So I see a real marketing opportunity, pushing forward on what's already been started, to capture Sebastopol, to build Sebastopol as the community that is resilient from an environmental perspective, to really make sure that we have our solar energy done, make sure that we are actively dealing with recycling and recyclables in a way that is real, not just superficial, to pull together micro centers so that when the power goes out, people can actually have access to power. Look at it as a way to build business and support business and also address environmental needs. I think also the fact that COVID-19 has forced us to recognize the benefit of outdoor activity. Isn't that an opportunity? We're in a town where outdoor activity is so easy unless there's smoke in the air. So we need to pull all of those factors together and be proactive about marketing that and benefiting ourselves on an environmental level and our businesses on a business level. And in terms of social justice, toss that in too. We need to present ourselves as the place that addresses social justice. I don't know how you feel about it, but I mean, the Black Lives Matter mural was a pretty prompt reaction that said, we're going to do something about it. Now, I don't think that's enough between you and me. I mean, that's great, but we need to not let that be a Band-Aid. We need to pursue it further. I think that we can pull together all of those pieces with the COVID-19 situation, which has kind of spawned a lot of that, and bring it all to our benefit in a way that brings together, doesn't create division, but brings together what others might see as diverse or divisive groups: business, environment, economic, social justice motivated people, and honestly, housing. Housing for our families is a huge issue. Well, if we're going to move forward with housing in the next step, this is a great opportunity, if we're going to prioritize environment, which we should, we got to highlight that. We already have a great housing element, housing policies that really do encourage that. But, I think we need to be really proactive about it. Let's put together brochures. Let's emphasize the solar piece. Let's emphasize the community building. Let's emphasize the opportunity for more co-housing, which again, there's a resource. Let's maximize our efficient use of resources. So, I would want to hear from you, whether you have some ideas. I was on the Gen H panel, and that was super interesting. I would encourage you to connect with them if you haven't already on housing issues. And I will be following up with Jesus Guzman, who's in charge there, to get his input. So I'm pushing forward on all of those issues, and I do see this as an opportunity to identify the places in which all those things intersect.
Awesome. So we're going to move on to a couple issues on a different topic. So what are your ideas to create more affordable housing in Sebastopol?
Big issue. So it is really interesting. I had to do a deep dive into this because I was on the Generation Housing panel discussion. I guess it was last night. Anyway, it was recently. And so I read all of the 129 pages of what's called the housing element here in Sebastopol, and there's a state-driven requirement that every jurisdiction have a housing element which outlines their housing goals. And ours is currently in the middle of its effective period. It's 2015 to 2023. So they'll be starting to look at it again. What struck me was that we have the foundational pieces that a lot of other jurisdictions are struggling to develop. So, and by that, what I mean is that we already encourage and allow tiny homes, co-housing, denser buildings. We are really great about accessory dwelling units and junior accessory dwelling units. We've eliminated a lot of the barriers to those. What's super interesting is we're all sitting here, you too, I'm sure, going, well, that's all really great, but where's the building, right? Where is the housing that should have triggered? The real challenge is that we don't control developers. So we have to figure out a way to encourage the developers who are facing hugely increasing construction costs to actually build those developments. We do in Sebastopol, I don't know if you know this, but we do have 3 projects going that are potentially much more affordable housing. They aren't single family dwelling, but they are more dense units. So there's one out on behind O'Reilly Media, probably know about that one, which is I think 80 units proposed. And then there's one across from kind of Robinson on Bodega that has 74 to 80 units on a couple of acres. And then there's the one over by Coffee Cats that is 18 units. So those are happening. But I think the real challenge on housing is we need to, instead of looking at how are we going to create new housing in a market where housing is incredibly expensive and affordability is, how do you even define that? We need to look at trying to, again, find the intersect between 2 apparently divergent interests, but I don't see them as divergent. So there is existing stock with housing stock within Sebastopol that is underutilized. We have seniors who are living in their homes. They've raised their kids and their kids are gone and they would like to downsize. We have small families who are looking for larger homes. The barriers for those small families are competing with outside bidders on housing and also down payments. How do you come up with, 20% of $1 million and monthly payments? So you have a financial issue there for the families who want to move into and be an owner in a single family dwelling. For the seniors, the barrier is that they don't have anywhere to go. Well, but they have money. And they are willing, because I've talked to them, they are willing, so long as they get the money that's the right market value for their house, they would be happy as clams to prioritize locals over out-of-towners. How do you pull those together? How do you free up that existing market stock and make it available to locals who have families? I know a number of them that I can tell you about, and give the seniors somewhere to move that's comfortable for them. It seems to me there's a real opportunity for a financial vehicle to do that for the new families. I've talked to a number of people about it, and for maybe development of a senior housing property. Wouldn't call it senior mixed, I don't know, but housing development that would be attractive, single family dwellings to those seniors because they have the money to invest in it. So I think we need to, and then locally, we are allowed locally to add a second story. We can go up to 3 stories. within Sebastopol downtown area. So maybe we need to try to figure out a way to move up on existing housing stock, add second stories, and pitch that to developers. Figure out, put a glossy brochure out, actually attract them, be proactive. Now, I will say that behind that is an important step, which is figuring out whether that's what people within Sebastopol need. I don't know. But I think it's those sort of creative ideas and pushing forward with them, recognizing we have the skill set and the resources and the drive here in town that we need to look at in terms of housing.
Awesome. So what is your view on the Sebastopol Inn project?
Well, Sebastopol Inn project is so interesting because you may already know this, but it was interesting to me to see the trajectory of people's emotions. I thought that was, as people within town, the kind of freak out because you don't have any information, the settling down when more specific information was fortunately provided. That was key. We human beings need facts. We need information. And we don't just want to be patted on the back. We want the details. And then moving on to kind of that settling with people, and now people dealing with the reality of it. So I felt that that was a good lesson to me, and it's something that resonates with me. I think communication is huge, and giving people information so they can reach their own decisions, and so they don't feel left out and excluded in the process. So there was that piece. Sebastopol Inn is a transaction over which we have very little control. The county was approached by the property owner who wanted to sell Sebastopol Inn. The transaction is completely in the control of those two parties, and it's driven by our governor, who has developed Project Home Key, I think it's called, and provided funding with the laudable goal of insisting that every single county do something about housing their unhoused population, especially in COVID-19. So the county has an obligation to get that done. They've been given that direction by the state, and there's money available, and they are looking at every jurisdiction to step up and satisfy that obligation. Interestingly, in this context, Sebastopol is amazing in how much it's already done given our population. We already have Village Park, the mobile home setting. We are dealing very progressively with the RVs on Morris. And we have a huge amount of subsidized housing that before redevelopment funds went away in 2012, we had established for low income and moderately low income. So we have done that. We have stepped up in the past. But the Sebastopol Inn is a perfect environment for the medically vulnerable, elderly, that the county is looking to house. So my position is that our best bet is to leverage our open communication with the county in order to ensure through our supervisor, Linda Hopkins, that we get concessions and commitments in writing that go long-term, that will meet the needs of the residents and the businesses in Sebastopol to feel secure, to feel that they can still use the community in a safe way without human waste on the streets, without people wandering into businesses, without violence, without drug use, that we insist on the 24/7 security, on the continued funding for that facility, on presence on a oversight committee, which our city council is already pursuing. But that's a situation where we don't have any real seat at the table, but we have leverage if we continue to be open and realize that the county wants this to go smoothly, and that that's our real power in this situation. And we have compassion, folks. That's the strength of Sebastopol. That's how I started this. We are individually driven, and we articulate our concerns, and each of us has passion, but we also feel in our heart. And so I see the community being driven by those concerns in terms of Sebastopol Inn. I wish we could offer a different option, but we don't have a turnkey option that the county is interested in.
Yeah. All right. Now we're going to switch gears a little bit and move on to the kind of social justice related questions. So your first question is, do you support defunding or divesting from the police? And if so, how do you make it happen in Sebastopol, especially taking the stacked budget into account?
Well, I have to say that terminology, so I'm going to get away from the terminology. I think sometimes it can be distracting. It can be a lightning rod to use certain terminology. Defunding, it starts to people back up and they start getting argumentative is what I found. What is really at the core of your question is, what do we do about the situation regarding police enforcement in Sebastopol, the budgetary piece to it, and the social justice piece. And they're all wrapped up, I get that. I happen to know Jerry Threet very well. He lives on my street. He is the individual who's doing the police audit. I have great confidence in him. He is insightful, he's well prepared, he's objective, and some people may find this hard to accept, but his heart is in the right place. He has respect for the community and he knows what he's doing. So my best bet on this issue is, and I think the results from the audit are going to be coming out pretty soon, is to look at the audit that he comes up with. I am hoping that he will have some specific proposals, screened through the city council regarding what police services need to look like in Sebastopol going forward. And from that decision, and there will be, policies need to be changed, but I think it's going to drill down to what should police services look like? What other services should we be providing that we wouldn't necessarily view as police services? Maybe it needs to be, and you've thought about this too, but there's the enforcement, there's the community outreach, there's some mental health pieces, there's all this stuff that's been lumped in as obligations under the police department. And we all know that it's created all sorts of chaos and all sorts of bad results with untrained people dealing with multiple situations. I think he's going to come up with a proposal that will help direct us on what services we should be getting in Sebastopol. Once we see what those services are, I think it's going to be really easy or much easier. Nothing's going to be easy in this. Much easier for us to determine where the money should go. So I guess I see it's the tail wagging the dog thing. Let's figure out what Sebastopol needs and then align the funding with those needs. And I have confidence that Jerry Threet's audit and community continued focus and vigilance, because I know it's going to be there, and a city council that knows that they have to pay attention to those issues is going to drive a plan that will help determine whether the current budgetary allocations are the appropriate budgetary allocations. My suspicion is that money is going to be reallocated. My suspicion is that there's going to be an identification of funding that is needed for mental health that will be served by outside the police department, funding for community outreach that may or may not be within the police department, and that there's probably a very narrow section that you or I might define as police enforcement. I expect that there will be a substantial amount that is removed from the equipment budget. I mean, really, we've got some heavy duty violent equipment and we are not in a town where that is needed. So my answer to you is that we need in Sebastopol to do a deep dive into what services do we need and let that drive the funding decisions. How that affects our budget no matter what we're already slimming it down to 10% by 10%. And the predictions now, as you probably know, are that we're going to be looking at 25% less. I mean, we had a $9 million budget. That is so little within Sonoma County. It's the littlest. And although it may sound like a lot of money to us for everything we do for the town, it's not. And it's going to be slimmed down to $7.5 million. But this is a priority. And I see our city council, whatever we need to do, this city council and future city councils are going to dip into reserves. And we were all going to be very, very pleased that our city management has managed to build those reserves. And we'll need to look to them, or bonds or something. So I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, it does. Thank you. And I think that's a good way of looking at it. I think we should wait for the audit and definitely see how all this fits in with our community in particular, and with the budget decreasing this year. I think that's important and brings up important concerns. All right, so our next question is, what is your position on ICE, and how will you support undocumented residents in terms of them being disproportionately affected by the climate crisis?
Well, they're disproportionately affected by everything. I'm very much in support of DACA. I'm very much in support of protecting undocumented workers. I have a deep-seated belief that the undocumented people who live here in town, honestly, just like the homeless, are part of our community, and they serve our community. They have lived in our community. They are part of who we are, and we need to protect them in every single way that we can. And I think Sebastopol has a pattern and a history of doing that. We don't out people. We protect people who are here, and we stand up for principles. And this is an area where we absolutely have to stand up for principles. How do we provide support for them in this climate change situation? I guess I see anything that we do. It's interesting because I just don't see these subsets of people. I see us all as a group, a community, all of whom need to be considered when any decisions are made. And maybe that just comes from, I've lived a life. I'm really in a comfortable place in my life right now. I'm really fortunate. And I've worked hard, but I'm also I'm lucky. And I know that everyone is one step away from being that vulnerable person. And that when you walk on the streets and you talk to people, any one of those people, if you take the time to actually find out, could be that person who is feeling vulnerable, who is undocumented, who is sleeping in their car, who is whatever. They're all part of our community. So what I would do in that situation is I would identify those people in our community in as approachable and non-confrontational a way as I could. I would identify those people in our community who are feeling particularly vulnerable in terms of ICE and being undocumented individuals here. And I would try to identify for them what are the specific challenges they face because of COVID-19, because of environmental concerns. And I would want to ensure that any policies that we develop in the city of Sebastopol have a wraparound effect, actually include their interests and collaborate with the organizations who honestly would know best about what those interests are. I hope that answers it.
Yes, thank you. Okay, we have one more question here. So how have you personally supported the movement for Black Lives? And how do you take initiative in supporting Black, Indigenous, and people of color in the future?
There was a big thing there. Personally, well, I certainly was in support of the Black Lives Matter mural. My background has always been one of being with a ton of different people of different backgrounds. On my Facebook page and on my website, I've been very proactive about posting any information that I got regarding Black Lives Matter, or, you know, on a deeper level, kind of racial injustice issues. I also see that the Black Lives Matter movement as the tip of an iceberg. I see that as a call to action on the Black Lives Matter issue, because there is a need to address that specifically, but also a need to recognize that behind the Black Lives Matter movement are just many, many people who have been marginalized by us without our even knowing it. It's kind of the, you know, it's the bias that we have that we aren't even aware of it because we don't question it. And that extends to Indigenous peoples. That extends to all sorts of subsets. We are a community, a nation, a human group that tends to prefer sameness. And I happen to think that that's a mistake. You see that in employment situations. I've seen that all my life. We are drawn to select out, without even knowing it, those who are similar to ourselves. It's more comfortable. And so going forward, and this is just part of who I've been in the past, I simply recognize that sameness is a mistake, that differentness and engaging people from different perspectives is beneficial to decision making. It can be uncomfortable. It can go against what you might feel you really want to do. But in fact, there are a lot of studies that you've probably looked at, that I've read, that I've researched, and that establish from a sociological perspective that decision making is better if you engage different views. So for me, that affects my approach if I'm elected to the city council in terms of decision making or policy making. I believe that we need to actively look at the people who we are engaging for decision making and ask ourselves, how can we engage more diverse voices? Be proactive about it. That includes people of color. It also includes people of different backgrounds. It includes economic variability. It includes, you know, people who are unhoused. It includes women, men. We have the opportunity to get perspectives from so many different people, even in Sebastopol, where we look at what is primarily a community of people who are not of color. But still, we do have people of color. And we also have people from very many different perspectives. So that will affect what I do as a city council member. And I intend to support the Black Lives Matter movement and, you know, that greater issue that's down there, the rest of the iceberg, that is insisting that we engage people from different voices.
Awesome. So we're just going to move on to a couple other questions. So how will you involve and include youth voices in the government?
Well, one thing that I definitely want to do, I mean, my background is all about engaging youth voices, so I have a track record there. But what is clearly on my list of priorities is to provide a way for the active youth voices, and let's not forget, those youth voices that are out there that haven't yet been drawn in, because now we're back at the whole sameness issue. So engaging youth voices in decision-making by the city council in a way that is productive. And that would be the idea of putting together an advisory committee or a task force or something. You'd have to ask the youth that are involved. And actually, I'd look to Generation H and Luke Lindenbush, who's very involved in the Sonoma, the Wine Country Young Democrats now. And also to you, and say, what would be the format that would engage your voices in a way that recognizes the various obligations that you have in your life. And by that, what I mean is, for you, doing something like going to a monthly meeting or a weekly meeting over the course of an entire year might not work for you. But because you have other obligations. You're on this path in life where there's a lot of things that you're doing. But you might say, no, but I would be really interested in being a participant on a small decision-making group committee that addresses distance learning with participation from educators that are good decision makers and have substantial background that would provide pragmatic solutions. I would like to participate in that committee. Or I would like to participate in a committee that was assessing, that would be like a short-term committee, not a monthly thing, that was assessing what are the housing needs that I, as a young person who might want to settle in Sebastopol, what would that housing opportunity look like to me? So I think we need to ask youth, how do they want to be involved? And then take advantage of that opportunity to get their voices so that our decision-making can be better, serve us now and generations in the future.
Great. So what is your overall vision for Sebastopol?
My overall vision is that we take this absolutely fabulous, quirky, really passionate town, and we build on what we already have, and we continue to make it, to allow it, provide the means for it to blossom in all the wonderful ways that it has the opportunity to blossom. I think one of the things that we're missing here, and it's something that's super important to me, is people, when they're talking about resources, and it's, you know, it's an American thing. Resources is, you're raised in it, resources is environment, but when you talk about resources that are available to do something, to invest, we always think of money. And I get that. You've got to pay the rent, you've got to buy the groceries. But in Sebastopol, we have a unique resource that we have not maximized. And that is the amazing number of educated retired people who are just itching to get involved and to contribute all of that built up experience and community obligation and need to share and intellectual resource. So that's the untapped resource that, as I look at being a city council member, I would look at in order to let the future of our town blossom. You need to give away on the distance learning side. You need to give away for Robin Bowen, who runs the Child Parent Institute, and Jude Kreisman, who is an incredible second, third grade teacher who's now retired, and the guy who runs mental health for all of Santa Rosa High, all Santa Rosa school systems, and Amy Windsor, who's an amazing young woman with a young family, and Franny Minervini-Zick, who founded Treehouse Hollow, and the woman who runs Castle, who is a daughter to Jim Corbett, Mr. Music. And she's running a system, an actual face-to-face childcare situation that is testing out how that can be effective. We need to bring those people together, and instead of letting learning pods develop off on their own, informally, developed by people who have the wealth to pay for a private instructor, we need to take all those resources and bring them together, all those people with all those amazing intellects, and come up, and you, one of you, come up with a solution that will allow this little town to really work on a pilot program on distance learning on a little scale, because we're a little town, but we might be able to then float that and make it available to others on a broad basis, but at least do it on a little basis and figure out if we can do something with that. So my goals are all the goals that you see on my website. They're all the visionary goals of Sebastopol. But with COVID-19 and everything else being tossed in the air, I think we need, and the budget's going down, I think we need to look at those intellectual resources, the energy that's driving people to want to get involved, and pull those together in order to do something incredibly inspirational that can make that this situation an actual opportunity, an open door for down the line it being even better, different but better. So that's kind of my vision.
All right, that's all of our questions. And thank you so much for taking the time to meet with us. Is there anything else in particular you want to share with us?
No, but I have all these questions I want to ask you. I mean, what is your vision of Sebastopol? Do you guys have a vision of Sebastopol? Something you want? What do you want this town to be for you? And you know, when you're like 20, what do you want it to offer you?
Well, I'd actually start with kind of a localized Green New Deal. So we've been working with the Green New Deal for a while, and it's just really inspiring to me. Kind of creating a community centered around social and environmental justice. We could have like, we already have like the Ceres Garden, but just kind of build on these like community areas. I would also, your idea about some sort of like distance learning, like something where we come together and like work on distance learning. I would love something like that. I'm always kind of complaining about our educational system even before COVID. So I'd love to work on that. That sounds really inspiring.
I wrote your name down. Watch out. Be careful what you ask for.
One little thing for me is that, so there is technically like a teen club, but it doesn't actually do anything, and you have to pay for a lot of it. And I think, and you know, the building right next to the community center, it used to be like a teen building, but now it's like where like Weight Watchers meet. So I would really love for like something where like youth can like hang out.
Yep, that was a big deal for me when I was at the community center. I know. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, like Rachel said about the localized Green New Deal, I know there was, do you guys remember that video of like the Iowans who like mapped out how it would look for their small town? Just like how it like really focused on, yeah, like community building and just like making this like beautiful little town filled with nature and just like respect and I don't know, just really working on that. And then yeah, school is really important to me too, because I often have my gripes with how the school deals with things. But also, I don't know, like more art around, like more, like I love like the vibrant, like I loved the mural idea just to like enrich the appearance of the town too. And I really love art and reading and all that kind of thing. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a sense, you know, it's interesting because human beings, we need hope. We need a sense of not just the basics being met, but, you know, quality of life, enrichment, that it goes deeper, that there's hope for the future. And so, yeah, and so what you're talking about, the areas that you're identifying, that's what they're about, you know, the vision of a community that is green, that is enriched in terms of the art and gardens and a sense of identity and engaging mixed ages of people and shared space where they can hang out. That's, and you know, the learning thing. Why can't in that community there be outdoor classrooms? I can't figure out why. We're in California.
Yeah.
So it's just that, just like I so struggle with that. Even like the Waldorf school, they have money. Why aren't they building an outdoor classroom? It's crazy making. In Sebastopol, interestingly, we do have a tradition of co-housing. I was just at 2 Acre Wood a couple days ago, which is over off Robinson. Oh my gosh, there's like 18 units in there. It's only on, I think, 2 acres. And they have all these communal spaces. They have beautiful gardens. and there's, I mean, we're sitting outside and there's, you know, flowers and plants and kids going by and dogs and cats. And I thought, wow, and this is not the only co-housing unit we have. So yeah, developing that push is really, I agree. It's that vision that Sebastopol has set for itself, because I mean, that really is kind of the vision. And somehow we need to kind of be proactive about re-engaging it. Have you guys seen that? Any of you seen that video for, you know, the Austin, Texas tiny homes installation? Really super interesting. Yeah. So I'll email out the link to you, because it's, I mean, it's just a very, it hits all those buttons that you were talking about. Really interesting, very creative. So anything else as a future potential city council member that, I mean, here you have me, I'm here all ears. Anything else you want to share with me that I should be like putting into my little brain?
I mean, kind of what you were bringing up about like youth opportunities to get involved. Like, I really would like to see more of that. And again, like, time is definitely an issue.
Yep.
There are some opportunities that I'm like, oh, that looks really cool, but like, I have so much going on, there's no way I can do that.
Right.
And especially like people have been talking about with school, like that really affects us, and I feel like we don't have that much of a say in it. And I feel like other things also, I feel like it's kind of harder to motivate people to like talk around, but like at school, so you just hear so many people talking about it, and I'm sure like so many people would have input on that. And so just really like, I don't know, having more of opportunity to really get involved with like school system would be really good.
So getting involved with how, with the idea of more creative solutions to the current situation and school, how to deal with the current situation and the limitations.
Yeah, and also like making it like obvious for people almost, like, you know, a lot of people like want to do something that they just like don't know how or like where to go. So like, I don't know, making it pretty intuitive. I don't know.
Yeah, so you mean, so making what intuitive?
Just like, I know, like just people like classmates and like youth, like, because we get told like, oh, we can handle this, like, and like people don't always listen to us, and we just like, I know, like, I wouldn't, a few months ago I wouldn't even have known like where to start or like who to talk to like share my input, kind of. So like, so, making it,
yeah. So what you're, yeah, so I think what you're saying is that for youth who want to be engaged, in order to engage them, we have to make it easy, accessible. There has to be, right? I mean, it can't just be you put a list, you announce it at a city council meeting. It's got to be, you have to find a way. So what's the way? Is it social media? Like right now in this situation, how do you reach youth?
Probably, honestly, like, I'm really bad. Like, the only reason I know anything about social media is because of Sunrise, because we have to have an Instagram and Facebook for that.
Is it just mail? I mean, do you just, maybe in COVID-19, what you do is, well, but you get some, but actually you probably don't get much mailed. No. Maybe it's just mailing something.
But I know for other kids, it would definitely be the way to, or I don't know, if like, or like contacting the school and like having the school.
That's what I was gonna say, something about how like maybe like having the school tell the students, or even having like city council come talk to like students.
Can you do that within the like COVID area Zoom meeting?
Probably not right now, but
yeah, but like after.
Yeah, that's a great idea. So city council members never came to Annalee to talk to students?
No, never.
Yeah, I had no idea about like anything to do with the city council.
What a lost opportunity. Oh my gosh. Wow. That is, wow, talk about marginalizing, right? It's like, here you all, hundreds of you. Oh, well, I will definitely, if I'm on city council, you can get sick of me. Yeah. No, honestly, I see what you mean, because it's, and that's so weird, because as a city council, that's what city council members know instinctively. It's the personal contact that makes the difference. So that's so weird that somehow that hasn't happened. Yeah, no, I know what you mean. I get it, I hear you.
Yeah. And also I feel like in places like aside from school, so like definitely I'd want to have like some way to like give input on school, and I feel like that would definitely be a really big way to involve people, but
Yeah.
also like, on other issues as well. I feel like it's kind of hard to like give input.
Yeah, there isn't, what I'm hearing is there isn't a vehicle for it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, for you to do it easily. And you have input on a number of issues. I mean, you have opinions on a number of issues. So that's a really interesting observation. And then what was I thinking? So, and I appreciate the emphasis on, because I understand this, the emphasis on the fact that with all the obligations that you have, I mean, you are primarily in school, you're in that stage in your life. Making a commitment that is, you know, a year long to being involved in a project is one thing, but maybe making a commitment to a focused committee that is going to meet 6 times to address distance learning and come up with some, you know, with a real structured, we're going to get this done, and coming up with a pragmatic proposal at the end of that period. Is that something that would be interesting, that you think would be doable, kind of a short-term obligation?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I know like the city council doesn't have like a huge control over like the school, but maybe like finding a way to like integrate a little bit. Well, I don't know if you can do that, but just like I know like just I don't know, reaching out to students and like involving a little bit more, because like even though a lot of us can't really vote, we're still like community members too.
Yes.
Yeah. So when I talked to Nasa Hinton, she told me about all these like committees and subcommittees and stuff like that. And I was thinking in my interview with her, like, wouldn't it be so cool to have like a youth committee just to give like advice to the council members?
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. But if you think about what you've just been saying, a youth committee to give advice is a great idea, but what about it being some sort of, you have to figure out, a city council wants ongoing advice. So the pragmatic piece would be, how do you structure a youth committee? And this is a question to you.
Mm-hmm.
How do you structure a youth committee to give advice that allows the youth participants to contribute the time that's comfortable with them? Maybe it's a shared, is it like a shared position, so that, or a rotating, you know, how do you?
That's a good idea.
To say. Like circling more. I don't know.
And then does it, and so one of you is at Santa Rosa High, right?
Yeah, I'm in Art Quest.
Yeah. So that raises this question. It shouldn't just be Sebastopol youth involvement is not limited to Annalee High School or Elmo or Laguna, right?
Yeah.
Like the teen club thing that Nora mentioned as like being like not super, I don't know, well thought out. I actually don't really know about it, but somehow like making that into like a wider spread thing to like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Utilizing that a little bit.
Yeah, and maybe it's not a youth committee. Maybe that's too structured. Maybe it's a format that sets up some sort of system that reaches out to youth to get their ongoing opinions on issues of importance. I mean, for instance, right now, right now the city council is looking at maybe purchasing bonds, getting access to additional money by taking on debt. And they're going to be deciding where that money should go. You know, should it go to housing, to supporting subsidized housing? Should it go to building an online purchasing platform, kind of like Amazon, but on a local level to support business? Where should it go? Maybe what we need is a way to almost send out like a quick survey, you know, just like a distributed survey to an email group or a text group or something, where it's a quick, you read it and you answer. You know, it's like quick answer back and forth.
Well,
And I mean, sorry, no, you go.
well, especially if it's through school, we can like access like all the students that way. And I feel like when it becomes like something else, it's really hard for a lot of people to like actively engage. But if it was just like a minor part of school, or like some, I don't know, something they even like give us time for, that would be really cool. I don't know. And I feel like then we would get so many more voices.
Yeah.
And I mean, sorry.
No, go ahead.
There's like ways to, for like example me, I don't go to Annalee, but there's ways to like kind of campaign that survey to like all over Sebastopol. You can be those annoying people that go knock on doors or send random emails to people. Like, it kind of works.
I like how you think. Yeah, and my relationship with the schools has always been great. So I'm sure, well, I shouldn't be so certain, but there's avenues for coordinating with the schools in a way that gets information out to students. I did that at the community center. I just, you know, I can't imagine that would be a big deal. And it's so interesting because now I bet the high schools are even more connected with each student because of COVID-19, right?
Yeah.
All the classes are distance learning. Hey, what's happening with students? So one of my concerns is this whole distance learning thing. Are you seeing that there are marginalized populations that aren't even participating in the distance learning classes? Are we losing students of color and students who are unhoused and undocumented workers? Are you seeing those people just not come to class?
Actually, I'm not certain like who it is specifically, but I know like I'm a good student and I'm having like a really hard time just like balancing everything and like not falling apart. So like I am positive that like those kids who were having a little bit more trouble in school, like a lot of them just like aren't doing the work. And I'm pretty certain a lot of kids haven't been turning in assignments or even really bothering going to class sometimes. And I don't know who it is or like what their backgrounds are specifically, but I'm pretty worried about it.
Yeah, I'm totally same experience with that. I was just thinking about like how much more difficult this year of high school is, just at the beginning, and then thinking about everyone else, and it just kind of scares me.
Yeah, what I feel like is in a lot of like the more like advanced like honors or AP classes, I'm seeing pretty good attendance. But like the classes that aren't honors or AP, I'm seeing like very good attendance.
Yeah, and that, I mean, that worries me. And it's not, you know, it's not just, I mean, that's going to affect our community in so many ways down the line. I don't think anyone really has any idea how devastating that's going to be for us economically and socially. And, you know, it troubles me, to be perfectly honest, this guy with whom I was talking who runs mental health. He's responsible for all mental health in Santa Rosa City Schools. And, you know, I asked him how things were going, and he starts talking about capacity building for after. And I'm just like, wow, does this mean, I don't know that that was what he was messaging, but my immediate thought was, it really sounded like he's kind of given up. Like he's decided that this is just a lost year. And I don't know, how do we engage those students? And because part of it is, if you were marginal beforehand, you don't have the social connections now. And honestly, a lot of them are taking care of little brothers and sisters. And their parents are going to work. And some of them are not only taking care of little brothers and sisters, they're working. And maybe that means that, you know, it'll build resilience down the line, but you know, what life? Think if you were having to deal with all of that and this crazy, weird, non-social learning environment. Okay, so I'm just gonna go slit my wrist now and I'll give it all up. No, I didn't mean that. There's hope, there's hope. And part of the hope is that I have is I look at you and I see you all so engaged and taking your time. You've taken so much time with me, over an hour, and you've been so insightful in your questions, and you are so open to being further, not just engaged further, but being engaged in a really constructive, pragmatic, let's make a difference sort of way. And so I really appreciate that. And I hope you won't mind if I reach out to you in the future and just like pick your brains on ideas and how we can get more people involved. And is that okay?
Absolutely.
Hire a handyman. I don't think.
Please send me the links that you were talking about, because listening to you impressive people tell me that you think that initiative is worth signing on to. I got to take a look at it, and I'm really curious about it.
Yeah, we definitely will. We'll send an email after this, I think.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you too.
Ooh, do you endorse anyone? Are you considering actually endorsing any candidates?
We're still in the process of deciding all of that. You know, we're like super new to this. So
I would encourage you, because you are in a position of being able to really make your voice heard. And I would encourage you to consider at least address that issue. Ask yourselves after you've talked to everyone, and hopefully, are you going to talk to Von Whalen?
We haven't been really able to figure out how
To connect with him?
Yeah.
I'll reach out to Von. He's just, I know him through my emergency preparedness work. But just because he's a young guy, I would think it would be worth, so I'll let him know. I'll text him. You've probably done that, but maybe I can urge him along.
That would be super helpful, because we just haven't been able to find contact information.
That's fine. He's a very quiet, reserved guy. I have no idea. This is his second city council run, and I'm like, I still can't figure out why he's doing it, but he is driven, darn it. And then you know, do you know Luke Lindenbush? So I mentioned Luke Lindenbush because he was going to run for city council and he didn't. He's a very articulate and really interesting young guy. He's 26 or something like that. But he's pretty savvy in terms of politics. He's on the planning commission in Sebastopol. And so if you're trying to, he might be an interesting sort of, you know, pseudo mentor for you if you're trying to figure out, should you endorse, how should you handle that? He's very knowledgeable and very well informed, and is amazingly, he presents incredibly well. He's very sophisticated. He was the questioner in one of the Gen H panel discussions, and I was like, wow, why didn't you run for city council? The heck? So yeah, that's great. You know, now is your time. You have an opportunity to really be heard. So go with it, run with it. Whatever you do, I'm inspired by you, and I think you have a chance to really inspire others. So I would encourage you to do that.
Thank you.
Sure. You're amazing. What can I say? Okay. Thanks.
Thank you so much for taking the time to meet with us. We appreciate
And right back at you. Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye.
Have a good rest of your day.
You too.
Oh, that was so long. I'm so hot. I just need to go. Like,
You wanna